Okay, looks like I'm live. I think you can see that. My little screen image in there was my own piece of the Frontenac axis that Karen and I own. We actually just came back 2 or 3 days ago from the tour of the potential expansion at Gananoque Lake Nature Reserve. So a little bit of Frontenac axis for the people who haven't been down there yet. So I'm your treasurer at Ontario Nature, third year completing, I think, this week. What we're going to do is touch on some of the highlights together in the next few minutes of the financial report. I know you've all read this in a lot of detail, and I know you're looking forward to talking about it a lot this evening. So we're going to talk about some of the key numbers, and then we're going to vote on two important financial motions. So we'll do that together over the next few minutes. Just got to get my keyboard working here. There we go. So from a highlights point of view, the organization had revenue of 4.03 million and expenses of 4.12 million. Expenses primarily are, of course, devoted to programs. And so we'll get into a bit more detail about what those expenses were specifically. We actually do have a surplus, which is good. As you recall, last year in Sudbury, we talked about our move to investment portfolio with the Bank of Montreal, and that's what Burns. And we have invested in an environmentally, social, and governance portfolio. We want to walk the talk in terms of where we have our investments in terms of sustainable, equitable kinds of investments. So we had a good year. We do have a surplus. Those are unrealized gains on investment, but they are on the book for the year. So you'll see that in the operating statement and the financial statements. Fair value of our investments was up about $216,000 altogether. So that offset a small amount of increase of expenses over revenue. Now, our fiscal year, in case you have forgotten, runs from March 1st to the end of February each year. Okay. Excuse me. So let's look at the 2024 numbers versus the 2023 numbers. Assets of the organization have increased to 3.8 million, and our investments are about 3.132, so $3,132,000 approximately. Now, when people provide donations and so forth to Ontario Nature, some of those may be restricted to specific programs, and others are unrestricted. So you can see the breakdown there for the total amount. Our capital assets are up as well this year, so they're at 7.3 million. Of that, land is 6.3 million. Those are our properties for the nature reserves that we have. We also have 3 easements in Ontario. Easements are legal restrictions that are on property which is owned by someone else, and we administer that to protect the property. And we have 3 of those in Ontario. Again, those details are covered in the financial statements document that you would have received with your package. So altogether, when we talk about our total value, we're at 14,244,000, up substantially from last year. Liabilities, people sometimes ask what those mean. Those are deferred grants. They come in the year, and they have to be held and used on the programs that they're allocated to. So we call those a liability. They're actually in our possession, that funding, but we have to allocate them to appropriate programs and so forth. Okay, let's look at the revenue here. You can see that the largest portion of our revenue comes from program grants. Those come from organizations, foundations, and government grants and so forth. The second largest proportion of our income, 29.9%, is composed of donations and memberships. And then a separate category, 10.7% of our income, or revenue, I should say, is bequests. Ontario Nature produces income or revenue for us as well. And then we have investment income, about 4%, and our change in investments, our growth in unrealized gains on investments, which appear on our financial statement, are about 5%. And we have just a tiny amount of other income as well, coming from different sources like rental and so forth. And I don't know whether this qualifies, I should check or not, but if you didn't receive your copy of the Reptile Amphibian Atlas on your doorstep today, I would encourage you to, as Carolyn said, have a look at that online and see if you want to order a copy as well. Okay, let's look at expenses. So Carolyn went through in a lot of detail explaining the conservation and education programs that your memberships and also the grants and so forth pay for, and the amazing programs that the staff delivers to protect and preserve nature in Ontario. There are some fundraising expenses, of course, of the new organization, and some admin expenses as well. Ontario Nature has expenses associated with the printing and so forth. It's essentially a break even, and the benefits of the publication are it's an amazing award-winning publication, and it provides a tremendous communication vehicle for our membership and to represent Ontario Nature to other organizations as well. And we have again, a small percentage of income, of expenses related to our rental properties. So we have offices, flexible office, downtown Toronto, and there are some other miscellaneous expenses as well. So let's look at our revenue over 5 years. We like to do this just to show you how we are managing through, so if you look at the 2021 fiscal year, and that's the time of COVID initially. So our revenue dropped during that time. It did bounce back the following year. And you'll see that reflected in the expenses as well, because if our revenue from grants and foundations and so forth drops, then we're restricted in what we can deliver in the immediate that same fiscal year. But we're on a good path where our revenue is growing over the 5 years, and we're on a good, stable financial footing in terms of our revenue. And then if we look at our expenses, you can see over 5 years, 2020 to 2024. In 2021, of course, some programs got deferred or delayed because of the COVID effects on the whole economy. And then our expenses have grown over the time in lockstep with our revenue as well. So as our revenue goes in, we budget, and we are able to deliver the programs that are important to you. Whoops, excuse me. So just to summarize, our goal on the board of directors and the staff is to continue to safeguard our assets, Ontario Nature's assets, and to manage our finances conservatively. I mentioned the ESG, environmental, social, and governance philosophy that we have for our investments, and those have produced good conservative returns for our organization. I want to thank all the members of Ontario Nature who help support us and working with us to protect Ontario's wild species and our wild spaces through our education, our conservation, and our public engagement programs.